Welcome to Before, During, After, a Smirk Experience podcast about performance from the inside. Every week, I'll sit down with a professional comedian to unpack how they prepare for a gig, what they're thinking about while they're on stage, and how they reflect once it's over. Because great performances don't just happen, they're built. This week's guest is Nathan Cassidy, who's a brilliant comic. Nathan runs his own nights. He trains comics who are about to embark on their first ever Edinburgh Fringe, and also helps us run workshops here at Smirk Experience. Nathan and me discuss his writing processes, how he overcomes internal doubt, his pre-performance routines, plus how on earth he's managed to do 16 Edinburgh Fringe festivals in a row. Enjoy. Nate, I want to start talking to you about your run of 20 consecutive Edinburgh Fringes. And there might be punters who don't quite understand the impact of that, in as much as everyone is a Herculean effort. I would say a lot of people would only do one. Most would probably do a handful. So for you to have done what you've done is an incredible achievement. Have you been given a carriage clock by the festival organizers?
Yeah, yeah. Let's go for a five-star review before the carriage clock. That'd be nice. But no. Yeah, so I've done it every year since 2010. When it, yeah, you say a Herculean effort. When I first started, it did seem that way. When you do your first hour show, I mean, it is a big thing. It seems like such a huge thing as an artist to do that, and I help other artists now doing their first Edinburgh. So I've got lots of advice that I can give to people based on those early experiences. But now it's become just a kind of matter of course. And I don't know whether that's a good or a bad thing. I think I maybe need to take a break, have a year off maybe. It's become a very kind of normal thing to do it every year. And indeed now I do two new shows every year. So double Herculean effort. And but I love it's my favorite part of being a stand-up comedian, doing the Edinburgh Fringe and doing shows generally. So I look forward to it every year now, and I think I've worked out a way. Well, I know I've worked out a way to do it successfully and do it as a financial success, which is the biggest difficulty of them all with the Edinburgh Fringe. Yeah.
Blimey, yeah. If you could package that up and flog it to people doing their first Edinburghs, you would make an absolute fortune. Are part of the
Yeah.
secrets that if too many people do the same things that you're doing, it will mess it up?
No, I mean I give the advice to everybody, but of course, a lot of comedians are at least 50 years younger than me now, so they have different ways they want to approach their first Edinburgh Fringe. There's two very different ways. I mean, there's many different ways you can approach it, but two main ways you can approach the Edinburgh Fringe now. Chuck a load of money at it and guarantee you're going to lose £10,000, £5,000 to £10,000, which a lot of comedians do, and that's the way to increase their profile as a young comedian. Get the show on a big venue, get a PR, get all the advertising, that kind of thing, or do what I do and try and make a profit on it, and a good profit, particularly from two shows, which is to do venues which support the artist more financially. So I've done a few things over the last few years, as many people are doing, but I think not enough people are doing it to support artists financially. and try and get better models where people are supported, because you say it's a Herculean effort. It's a Herculean effort anyway, but add into that the fact that people are losing a lot of money, and psychologically, it's a I don't know whether I can swear on this podcast, but it's a head. Yeah. It's difficult. It's difficult for people, It's difficult for people, even if it's going really well. It's a show every day. You've got all the things psychologically going on with that. You've got reviews, you've got to stand up in front of people every day, all of that going on as well. But if you're losing thousands of pounds and maybe over £10,000, if that's money you can afford to lose, fine. But a lot of these artists, they can't afford to lose it. I mean, famously, like people like Michael McIntyre were down over £30,000 before they got famous, from doing the Edinburgh Fringe a few times. So it can you do a couple of fringes, you're down 20, 30 grand, and you're betting in a casino that hardly anyone ever wins.
No, that's absolutely correct. And another thing to bear in mind, I think, is by the creative nature of those people's minds, they aren't always the most commercially or economically savvy people as well. So if you get with the wrong producer, they can very easily just use you as a method to kind of dosh up all of their mates. And well, you would need 2 grand for this. You need at least 1,500 for that. And it's like, okay, and you can just picture like an artist going, okay, okay, okay. And then it's like,
Yeah,
well, what's the thing? Well, it's PR, who knows
yeah.
what's at the end of it. So no, I could totally relate to all of
Partic Particularly when you're a young artist, in their early 20s. And yeah, these bills come at you and you just go, well, this is normal. And it is normal to a certain extent. It's crazily normal. You think of any other job and you just think, oh, you've got to pay 10 grand to do this yourself. You're like, what are you talking about? I'm the one doing the job, aren't I? In no other job would you have to pay to do it, to do the job.
no,
But it's become normal, and it needs to change. And as I say, me and a few other people are trying to do little things, but you're fighting against a tide. New systems need to be created, and they have done by the free festival and the free fringe and that kind of thing. And there's loads of good models at the Edinburgh Fringe now, like the stand guarantees you don't lose money. Hoots is a great model as well in terms of they don't take too much money up
yeah,
front. So it is changing, but slowly.
yeah, good, 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 good. But no, super stuff with the all those Edinburghs, mate. That's an incredible effort. Let's
Mm.
take it way back then, shall we? When did you first realize that you wanted to be a stand-up?
At school, so at about yeah. Well, I always performed in kind of plays and stuff, but at school when I was probably about 14 would be when I wrote my first stand-up sets. So I knew I wanted to be a stand-up then, really, but I didn't have anyone around me in creative industries. I didn't have any support in terms of this is a job. My school was a grammar school, so it was very education focused. So when I would go to careers advisors, I would maybe mention creativity, but they'd quickly put me down the law route. So that's the kind of route that I went down to, law and banking. But I dropped out of those things because I knew I wanted to be a stand-up, but it was just finding the route to do it as a job. So yeah, when I was about 14, I wrote my first sets. When I went to university, I was at a university where the stand-up crew was over there and I was over here doing theatre stuff. And the stand-up crew you couldn't really break into. Marcus Brigstock was one of those guys. Danny Robbins, who's now the big ghost guy on TV, if you know Danny. But they were all lovely people, but it was kind of a closed shop in terms of stand-up. So I didn't really do much stand-up at university, but I did loads of performing. I did kind of plays and panto where I would stand in front of the crowd and do basically what is stand-up. But um, So yeah, I knew I wanted to do it all along. I knew I wanted to go to London, get a job so I could be a stand-up, and that's what I did. So eventually I did it at about 20, early 20s, yeah, 23, something like that.
And you mentioned about giving other acts advice now about Edinburgh. What advice would you give yourself starting out?
Oh goodness. Yeah, it's a tricky one because, you know, I don't regret anything that I've done really in terms of the way I've approached it. However, I know I've approached it in an unconventional way because I've recognized that I kind of don't want to be part of certain systems. But if you separate yourself from those systems, then you're not in the gang. And if you're in the gang, it makes it a lot easier. But as I say to a lot of people who want to try and be in the gang, and I know that's a big question, kind of what is the gang, but I'm sure people will know kind of what I mean. Because in any industry, you're either in the gang that's going to get the things, or you're not quite in the gang. And I think in stand-up comedy, there's still to a great extent, being in the gang is what university you went through, and that's Cambridge and Oxford. Really, that's an easy way of getting in the gang. Um, so I think you can, and there are comics that do it. They kind of maneuver themselves into the gang, and people criticize them for that. But I'm not going to criticize anybody because it makes your career kind of a lot easier in a way. But if that's the kind of career that you want, and I say to people, why do you want to do this? It's like, well, I want to get on this. I want to get on, like a panel show, Richard Osman's House of Games. And for me, it's just like, put me on Richard Osman's House of Games if you want. But that's not my ambition. My ambition is something different. My ambition is to create shows that move people and inspire people. That's my ambition. And that's an ambition you can easily achieve because it's all in the writing. If you have that ambition of going on, which I don't know why I picked Richard Osman's House of Games. It's a lovely program. I was watching it this week, but you know what I mean. It's you
Yeah.
have to know as an artist what do you want to achieve. So what it's that old adage. You may as well be on the ladder you want to. Rung one of the ladder you want to climb rather than the top of a ladder that is ultimately not going to make you happy.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. Having having more meaningful goals than just, yeah, a pair. Well, unlike you, I don't even watch those panel shows. Never mind have any ambition to be on them. But each to their own.
Yeah, so
People might look at what I do and say, "What do you want to do that for?" So that's fair enough. But
yeah, I really, you know, your question's an interesting one in terms of going back because you do go back in your mind, but yeah, I really look back with regret because you can't beat yourself up too much
no,
about decisions you make because often, almost always, you hardly ever make a decision thinking, I know this is the wrong decision. Um, a friend of mine does that. He says, I know this is the wrong decision, but I think it'll be an interesting thing to make the wrong decision. I think he's a very rare person that knows he's making the wrong decision. Um, he said to me, Oh, I often think I'm making the right decision, and that leads nowhere anyway. So sometimes
okay.
but that's a rare thing. So,
So then he doesn't have to worry if it's right or wrong because he knows it's wrong.
ex exactly. And that's what he says. He says, Well, that lets me off the hook because even if it goes tits up, I
Yeah,
did it with my eyes open,
I
you know?
knew that would happen, and exactly
Yeah, yeah.
that.
He's an interesting character.
Yeah, right. I like
The
being.
cat, the cat's just walked into the room, which is
Oh,
if you can
jolly
hear
good.
meows in the back, it's not my cat, but it's
Cats are normally
yeah,
quieter
which
than.
sounds like I've kidnapped a cat, but yeah.
No, my dog has been in the garden barking at builders. That little sod definitely will not be in the room for this. But cats are.
I'll get the cat. I'll get the cat on a podcast. There we
Oh,
go.
look at that. Lovely. What's the cat called?
There's Wolfie.
Wolfie.
Off you
Very,
go, Wolfie. Off you
very
go.
nice. Very nice indeed. I like your friend's attitude to choosing whether things are right or wrong. And also, like you, I'm a lot more forward focused. Some, as I just said, everyone's wired up differently. Some people are big into the whole kind of like, reminiscence, memorabilia. Let's do a reunion. I get involved in all of those things, but I always slightly kind of roll my eyes when I'm asked to them. I'd much prefer someone to say, "Do you want to meet up and talk about something you've never heard anything about?" I would be like, "Yeah, let's do that thing. Let's do that thing." Let's talk
Yeah,
about.
I think go,
Go
yeah, I
on.
think it was sorry, yeah, going back into your past is good for material, but yeah, not good for a state of mind really, because obviously you can't change anything. And as I say, you almost certainly did things with the best intentions, and almost always things don't work out quite as you
No, woulda,
imagine.
shoulda,
But
coulda.
yeah, regrets is hard psychologically. To avoid that is good, I think.
Absolutely. Well, you just touched on something that's quite a neat segue. So you've done 20 Edinburghs. And for people that don't know, by the way, all of those 20 hours plus the extra ones you're doing, the industry etiquette is that you do a completely different hour under different show titles. So you have
Yeah.
developed a prolific creative output in order to generate that much material. How and where do you get ideas for jokes or shows?
So I write every day, and as I say, I work with some newer comics, and so I learned to play music over the last 10 years.
Mm,
And the obvious thing with music is you need to play every day, otherwise you stagnate or go backwards. And that's the thing with writing. When I first took up music, people said, "Oh, this will be really good for your stand up," and I didn't quite understand, but now I do. It's good for kind of performing in terms of timing and feeling and emotion, but it's also good in terms of the discipline of writing every day. So I write every day. I do a daily podcast called Daily Notes where I just do some ideas to a piano backing. So my mind is constantly looking for ideas. And a lot of those ideas will go into the shows. But if you're doing a couple of minutes, so if you're doing 2, 3 minutes a day, that's a huge amount of material that you've got. And only a bit of it will go into the shows. When you find something shiny within what you're doing there. So that's a way of writing every day. But then at the start of kind of a creative year, so a creative year for me will probably start in around April for the following Edinburgh. So if I can write a show from like maybe March to March and have it ready by March for that year's Edinburgh, then I can start writing the next one. Um, so at around the turn of the year, I'm thinking, what's my next show gonna be about? And it will be some of the things I'm thinking about right now in terms of what's coming out of me creatively. I don't often just no, I don't think I've ever sat down and thought, what's my next show going to be about? It just comes to me, get myself in a headspace, I guess, where it's I know this is the time where I need to form a new show. And when I'm working with other comics, I say develop a kind of jigsaw piece puzzle in your head in terms of what's inspiring me at the moment. What am I thinking about at the moment? And there the jigsaw puzzle starts to form. And then you've got a picture, and it's okay, what's this show about? But you've got this picture in your head of all the things you want to talk about right now. And that will help you with your writing then. Once you've got that picture formed, it can change a little bit, but it helps you in your writing in terms of, okay, what can fit into that jigsaw? And if it doesn't fit in the jigsaw, it doesn't go in the show. But if it does fit in the jigsaw, then you know you're building that show for the following year. So
absolutely.
yeah, I love the process. And as I say, I write two new shows now, so I have two jigsaw piece puzzles going on in my head every year.
Brilliant. And when you say write every day, I obviously, wouldn't ask you to read anything from a notebook on here or anything like that. But what would be the types of things that would go in to that writing on a daily basis? Do you have, subjects you're thinking about, or is it anything that's just popped into your head?
Well, the way I do daily notes is that I take a song title. So it's a bit complicated, but the first letter of each song title spells out a Beatles song over the course of a year.
Oh,
So I take a song from the charts that has the first letter that fits into that structure. So it's a little bit random, but it's almost always from the Billboard Hot 200 because I feel like the title, if it's current, then it might add to the algorithm of no. So, but the title will often inspire a thought. So the title of any song, whatever it's "Holiday" by Madonna, not that that's in the Billboard Top 100. My references always go back to the 1980s, but "Holiday." So I'm then going to write about a holiday that I either want or I've been on. So like I say to everyone that I'm working with, they say, "Oh, I can't think of anything to write." Just write. You can always write. You can always kill the white and just write something because it doesn't have to be funny. We've all got stories from the past we can just write down, and there will often be a word or a phrase or hopefully an idea from what you write if you write half a page. So I take that idea, holiday. I think, oh, what's that holiday that I was? Oh, what's the holiday I want to go on? You write a bit, you think this isn't particularly funny or interesting, but then you hit upon something and you think, oh yeah, I'll talk about that. So it's kind of semi-written down, then I'll get in front of the piano. And when you're playing the piano, something can happen organically, like it does in front of the audience, hopefully, where you think, oh, this is funny. And you're laughing yourself at something because you've only just thought of it. And it's
mm,
getting yourself in that mindset where, as you say, like with music, if you're playing it every day, you're giving yourself the chance of finding the gold. You know, you
yeah,
need to dig and you need to dig deeply and you need to dig every day. If you don't dig at all, you just cross your arms, you're never going to find the gold, of course. And often it's tin. Listen to the podcast, it's tin, it's silver at best. But then sometimes it's like, oh, that was brilliant. And then that goes in the show, probably.
brilliant. I think there are so many things that people could take from that. It's about discipline,
Mm.
committing to do it every day. And also, as you said, it's a numbers game, isn't it? I always say to groups when we're talking about creativity, right, first thing, if you want to have one good idea, you'd better be prepared to have seven or eight rubbish ideas. And that
Yeah.
there are companies like Dyson and their R&D department, they know that only something like 20% of the ideas that they work on will ever get anywhere near, being available in a shop. But they've done the
Yeah.
maths and they're like, yeah, but that's all right because that 20% is going to be a vacuum cleaner that doesn't need a bag or whatever it is. And that'll catch us up from all the ones that didn't work and then end up, making us a few quid. But I think so many
Yeah.
people would just kind of dip their toe into the process, do it for a short amount of time and go, no, that was a load of rubbish, that was. I didn't write yesterday within 5 minutes. I must be no good at
Yeah.
this. And they
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
they miss the sort of ratios that are involved.
Absolutely, yeah. If I do 3 minutes a day, then that's 20 minutes a week, 80 minutes a month. So what's that? 1,000 minutes a year, and you only need 60 minutes for a show, so you're writing so much more than you need. And Alf Lyons said the same thing. Alf Lyons, one of our great stand-up comedians, multi-award winner all around the world. And she put out some advice. She said, if you're writing a show and you just think, oh, this is bad, it's part of the process. It's you've got to write all that, but it's not. You can reframe things. It's not bad. It's part of the process. You have to go back to the analogy. You have to dig up that mud to get to the gold. So all that mud, it's like you can't criticize yourself for it and go, that was awful. No, that's part of it. That's part of the process of finding the gold.
Yeah, absolutely right. Let's talk about the performance element, shall we? Would you have any kind of pre-gig rituals, habits, triggers? Call them whatever you like. Let's talk about the day of the gig. Have you got a gig tonight, by the way?
Yeah.
All right, so perfect. Let's use today as an example. Are there things what are the things today that you're looking to make sure you definitely do or definitely not do?
Um, Not have a cold. That's number
Not
one.
have a cold.
Um, um, so yeah, it because I've been doing it so long. There's well, let me start again. So obviously all comedians are different. And I also remember talking to somebody, another comedian, saying they woke up anxious. They woke up anxious. They spent the whole day anxious. They did the gig. Before they went on, they were anxious. During the gig, the anxiety lifted a little bit. Then after the gig, they had a 30-minute or an hour window where they weren't anxious. And that was the day. That was the part of the day they were looking forward to. And I remember that and I was thinking, oh my God, that sounds horrendous, you know? Thank goodness I'm not like that. But I've tended to be on the opposite end of the extreme, for one reason or another. I think it's probably genetics. My dad's a lot like this. He's very kind of chilled. Um, kind of, and this is how I am. I jokingly say that I'm dead inside to it, but I am a bit, and I think it's good in one respect in terms of I never get really high from a gig. I never get low. The only way I get low is when I don't do it. So that's why I keep doing it. I keep doing it every day to keep me on this nice level. So it's good in that respect, but it's probably bad in another respect because I can fall into the trap of being too relaxed, not thinking about it enough. I would never do that with a show, but sometimes with a gig, it's like, well, I've done this a million times. And I think you can do that with hosting. You can, as an experienced host, you can get up there and not think about it until the second you go up on the stage, and it will almost certainly be fine if you're very experienced. As a comedian on the bill, I think that is fraught with a little bit of danger. Only a little bit of danger because I'm so experienced now, but I certainly wouldn't advise it to anybody because I can sometimes walk onto a stage. I think particularly if it's a bigger gig, kind of 400 people, I did this recently and I just was not thinking about it at all. I just wandered on and I thought afterwards, you weren't ready. You weren't ready to go. And we talk about it, don't we, in terms of your first line, practice it.
Yeah.
And you'd say that to newer comics, and I say this to newer comics all the time. They're making decisions about you as you walk to the mic and as you deliver your opening line. And I think you can never be too experienced to know that that is good advice. Because if you cock up your first 30 seconds and you're wondering on if I have done from the back room and haven't really thought about it, it's like, well, who's this guy? Why is he just ambling on? Who does he think he is? Treat every gig with respect because it can. And I don't think it's ever going to go bad. Well, touch wood, it's never going to go right really badly now because I've got so much experience. But your job is to entertain everybody to the best of your ability. And if you're just ambling on with little thought about it, you're not doing your job properly.
Yeah, I would say all of that is absolutely spot on. I'm not going to name them, but I've worked with a few TV comics who are just
Yeah.
like a bag of nerves before and even afterwards they come off and go, oh my God, I'm not really sure about that. Did you see that? What did you think about that? And I'm always like, what are you talking about? They all love, but that's
Yeah.
just their, I don't know. Everyone's got their own processes, which is, to quite a large extent, the whole point of this, podcast to interview different comics about their processes. But I agree with you also. You need a little bit of an edge. You've got to be a little bit
Yeah,
like a boxer about to go into a ring when you do it. And I've
yeah.
had one or two shows where very unprofessionally I've bumped into a comic that I've not seen for months and months in a green room, and we're just having a good old blinking gossip. And then it's almost like out the corner of my ear, I hear the MC say, now, ladies and gentlemen, Sam Carrington. And I go, yeah. And
Yeah,
yeah, you're just then kind of putting your foot on the gas, but nothing's happening almost because you're not, because you haven't
yeah,
like pumped the fuel through the line and it's ready to go. That's kind of
yeah,
how I would describe it. I don't think you want to get to a stage where you're, you know, anxiety ridden all day, but a little bit just before you go on of like, oh, here we
yeah.
go, blimey. That is essential.
Yeah, it's to take that level of care about everything you do. So kind of in the writing process, is it is it good enough? Are you putting that time in? Is it just okay or is it great? And you can take that forward to the performance. Am I feeling in the right headspace? Am I just going to go on and be average? Because you can phone it in
Yeah,
at some gigs and get away with it. But you shouldn't be if it's your job and you're being paid properly, which is sometimes rare in stand-up comedy. But whatever, you've chosen to do this job, do it to the best of your ability.
absolutely right. How has your relationship with nerves changed over the years from your early gigs to now?
Um, Again, I'm a little bit different to a lot of comics in terms of I don't feel nerves at all now. Um, and yeah, I probably didn't feel them back in the day too much. So I feel nerves less than other people. What I do feel sometimes is, particularly kind of at a bigger gig, I guess. Yeah, almost certainly always at a bigger gig. It's kind of I'm watching it from the sidelines or from the back sometimes of the. I sometimes go to the back of the theatre and see the host and see maybe the opening act or whenever I'm on the bill, and I just think, it's kind of I can't imagine me being up there. So there's a little bit of feeling of this is just odd. This is odd that I'm gonna be there in a minute and I can't. So yeah, so different thoughts run through my head during the course of the day, which is not nerves or even negativity. It kind of takes a little bit sometimes to get my head around what I'm doing. Particularly at gigs. I think it's clearer in shows because it's like here I am, I've written a show, you've come to see me, and I'm artistically trying to give you something, inspire and uplift you. But at a gig, yeah, particularly when it's like last night I was at a gig. So I was at the back of the room and there's various crazy elements going on. So drunk people, um, really upsetting the show. They left, fortunately, before I went on. People leaving, a whole section of the crowd that was brilliant, other sections of the crowd that were a bit chatty. And I'm sitting there at the back, just as a kind of audience member, thinking this is all crazy. But then you get the feeling of, but that's me in a minute dealing with all of this.
Yeah,
So it's not nerves, it's just a sense of, "Ugh, what what am I doing?
yeah,
What
yeah,
what shall I do up there? Will any of this be relevant? Am I overthinking it? None of
yeah,
this will be relevant when I get up there because by the time I'm on, all of these elements will have gone. So that's what happened last night. All of those elements were gone, and I stand up there and I could have just not mentioned them, but actually, I said I wasn't here for the first section of the show, which I wasn't, because I was closing the show. But people kept referring to it, and I just thought I just want to refer to the um, the fact that I felt quite sad that I'd missed it. Like
yeah.
missing a car crash. You're driving past a car crash. You think I kind of want to have seen that, however horrific it was. I want to, yeah,
I'm fascinated by the self-doubt that very able and competent people will go through. And it could only be a
Yeah,
thought that kind of comes in and goes out. We had a Will
yeah.
Hannigan on here. You know Will from Canada?
I don't think I do. I don't know whether I've gigged with him, but
Okay. Yeah, I mean, he's a very, you watch him on stage and he's a very relaxed, assured North American comic. But
yeah,
I was genuinely surprised when he was on about the kind of stuff he was sort of overcoming in his head in order to do what he does. And I think
yeah,
self-doubt is a really natural thing for most of the time humans have been on Earth. It was that doubt or worry that actually stopped us being eaten every single day. And I think people try things for the first time, get that same doubt, and just think, well, I can't do that. I'm too worried about it. And it's like, no, 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 no. The people that you watch doing that, they have that doubt, but they've also just got the ability to shut it up, if you see what I mean, to stop.
yeah.
Do you have any
Did you
kind
say?
of coping mechanisms when something comes into your head? Have you got anything that you use to knock it away again?
Yeah, I do. So I don't know whether Will was talking about during a set or before a set with the self-doubt. I mean, I guess it's a mixture of both for a lot of comics. Probably more self-doubt is before the gig and after
Yeah,
the gig rather than during, because
I think that's
you
what
don't
he
have
was
enough
saying.
space.
Anyway, you were go on.
Yeah. Yeah. So before and after the gig is the same for me, really. 'Cause I'm maybe thinking about after the gig, I'm just thinking about my career generally. There might be self-doubt. Before the gig, I might be thinking about that specific gig. Um, it's similar in a way in terms of if I have self-doubt or a feeling of negativity, it's just a positive mind, switching my mind up to be more positive, thinking it's a privilege to do this job, positive thoughts. You wanted to do this job as a kid. You're being paid to do the job that you love. You used to work in banking, which you hated, and it's a privilege to be there. Also, perspective, people around me, not going through good times. Obviously, the state of the world, not going through good times. I had a kind of serious health scare a year ago, and you can easily put your mind in a better mindset to say, I'm very happy to be here right now, rather than self-doubt. And also know that the self-doubt is absolutely common and not surprising. Of course, you got self-doubt. You're just about to step in front of 400 people, three of whom are very drunk in the front row. If you think you've totally got that, then you're you must be a wizard because we haven't always totally got everything. Self-doubt isn't a bad thing. Again, if you've got self-doubt, you're questioning, you're getting yourself ready. So last night there was a bit of doubt in terms of how am I going to deal with that person, not from a perspective of because I've got loads of experience now. You kind of go around the other side, I think, with these things. You think I might. I saw a comic. I won't name them, but at the comedy store, dealing with a heckler in a way that I've never seen. Just getting very annoyed with them, saying you're ruining the night. Not being funny, just looking at them and going, "You're ruining the night. Stop being an asshole." And not even trying to get a laugh. You just got a round of applause at the end from all the other people, and that's how I am now. You've gone through all the kind of heckle put downs in your career you ever have, and you're so experienced now all you can just say is shut up.
Yeah.
And so this was going through my head last night. Like, don't be rude to this person, but this is the only thought going through my head. So, yeah, quite a few coping mechanisms in the moment. And the same goes for after a gig and thinking about a career generally, because careers are full of opportunities, missed opportunities, and there's different ways of looking at different things to put yourself into more of a positive headspace. And it's incredibly important because this job, if you don't put yourself in a positive headspace, can easily get on top of you.
Yeah, 100% correct. I think the mind is almost like any other muscle in the body, isn't it? You work at it, it gets better.
Yeah.
If you don't, then it can end up in some bad places. While you're on,
People forget about it. Yeah.
yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
And they don't do if you can afford therapy and that kind of thing, or there's therapists that specialize in creative people and all this kind of thing. It's really handy to do it and focus on the mind and look at the kind of things and what you do, and it's kind of don't ignore it, as you say, like any muscle. It's the most important.
Yeah, it is. It is. And yeah, I've seen a couple of shrinks in my time. I might see a couple more. I don't think it's any different from, getting a bad elbow fixed by a doctor. And I think a lot of the stigmas around it are reducing now, which is good. It's really good.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
What about actually while you're on stage? Everybody, Nathan, Cassidy, clap, 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 clap. Open well, get a laugh in the first 30 seconds. Are you thinking about much while the show's on, or are you just kind of in some kind of flow state autopilot?
Yeah, I guess it is flow state autopilot when it's going great. Those are the best gigs when you don't have to think about anything.
Yeah.
Often there's new material, there's a little bit of new material that I'm putting in, so I'm thinking about that. You're making split-second decisions about how the crowd are responding to certain words, certain bits of material. So you're switching it up in your heads, you're responding to elements in the room. But I think the best approach sometimes is to shut out those little bits of things that you can see because nobody else can see or hear them. And you might be overthinking certain things. But certainly to respond to the room, to anything that the audience are noticing. But
Right.
yeah, it's important to respond to them in terms of I think how they're responding to material. If you go dark and they pull back, are you going to try and coax them in and do some more dark stuff, or are you going to pull back completely? It's these are the decisions you're making as you're on stage, but it's split second without thinking. You are in a flow state. You're just making those decisions based on experience.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And afterwards, what would be your methods of, working out how it all went? Are you someone that tapes shows? Do you watch back? Or do you make notes? Do you just go from your memory? How does that bit work?
I try to record every show that I do, just on a phone. Um, I don't often watch them back, really. I tape them just if I can use a clip from them. Um, so, because in your head what happened in that moment, if there's something to learn from. Either that's the material didn't go quite as you wanted, or an interaction didn't go quite as you wanted. It's in your head, but I certainly record everything. And I would recommend everyone starting out, or certainly in the first few years, record everything, watch it back. And you often see recordings from people, and they send you recordings either to get gigs or to give you advice. And you can see so much. Obviously, you can. And I'm surprised that people put up certain clips that just you know, don't look brilliant online. Um,
Yeah.
but I guess you have to sometimes if that's all you've got from the first couple of years. But when you see a clip back, you know exactly how it went and how everyone's has seen you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I once had a guy send me a video because he wanted to do a smirk gig, and I think it was the second gig he'd ever done. And
Right.
surprise, surprise, it looked like the second gig he'd ever done. And I was, I was, I must have had a bit of time because I can remember answering him. I was like, "Yeah, look, mate, thanks for the email and the video. Appreciate your ambition, but yeah, if I was you, I would stick on gigs that don't require videos to get on for the next 50 or 100 performances to then take it on from there. But yeah, that was yeah, I suppose you could say nothing ventured, nothing gained, but the flip side of that coin is that you're kind of wasting professional promoters' time showing them just rubbish, basically, which
Yeah, well, you're a good promoter clearly that watches more than the first 4 seconds of any clip because I think you can make a decision literally in the first 10 seconds.
yes, you can. Yes, you can.
And
That's
s-
absolutely
and
right.
sometimes, yeah, sometimes it's the state of the room before you've even got on stage. I'm like, why have you released this? Why are you showing me this? It's
Yeah,
but no,
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
always watch
yeah.
the first 2 seconds, but it's yeah,
No, that you're absolutely right. I've seen so many. I can now tell when the person just comes on and says good evening and what
yeah,
they do with the microphone in the first. Like, take it out of the stand, put the stand to the side, look back. I'm already like, yeah, you have beaten an incredible number of people whose videos I've seen who,
yeah,
for whatever reason, don't do those things. Do you
yeah.
use? I love the stuff you were saying before about getting yourself in a positive state and reminding yourself of positive things. Would they be the same types of thoughts that you would employ if a gig does not meet your expectations?
Um, yes, yes and no. So it's yeah, not to get too down about it. Sarah Millican talks about it, doesn't she? It's like be down about it till 11 o'clock, I think, the next morning, which
Right.
I think is fair enough. Then get on with your life, which is kind of nice. It'd be even nicer to go to bed not thinking about it, but I think she's right. I think that's kind of impossible when you just got off stage. You got a couple of hours before bed, so you're going to go to bed feeling rubbish, and then you're going to wake up and get on with it. Um, so yeah, it's obviously good to learn from, they're not mistakes, they're just things that happened in the room. As you say, you could have just been too relaxed before you went on. An interaction wouldn't have worked out. Um, but most importantly, it's don't beat yourself up too much. This is a very difficult thing that you're doing, you're trying to pull off, and it's not always going to go brilliantly. So you can't beat yourself up too much. And then it's employing those same strategies of perspective. You're lucky to have this job. All of those things which will get you back into feeling that positive mindset. So yeah, it's it's as I say, it's really important. Going back to that comedian that wakes up anxious every day and only has a 30-minute window. I think probably a lot of stand-ups are like that. And no wonder they talk about comedians being depressed because a lot of stand-ups go through that. They're anxious for the whole day, and they have that window after a gig and uh, and that is why more artists need help. Talking about therapists there, more artists need to go to somebody and talk before it gets on top of them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely right. I would agree with all of that. Like artists are wired up differently from normal people. And I
yeah,
know there have been in the past 5 or 10 years some very high profile examples of artists doing terrible, inexcusable things that normal people don't do. And I'm not for a second trying to condone blinking Jimmy Savile or Rolf Harris or whoever they might be. But I do think that in order to be creative, a performer, however you want to describe it, you do need the chemicals in your brain to be wired up differently than normal people. And I think normal people need to realize that if we used all only the same yardsticks to judge creative people as we do normal people, then you won't have many creative people left very, very quickly.
Yeah, that's interesting. It was funny watching you ask that question with some kind of device on your finger, which marked you out as not a normal person, whatever that was. I'm like, you were going, we're not normal people. You've got some weird contraption on your
That's it.
fingers. Ah, I don't know what that is. But let's not ask. You're a creative, Sam. You can have whatever you want on your fingers.
Thank you,
Um,
Nathan.
so- particularly, particularly the great artists. So, like Don McLean talks about it. And many artists talk about it. Great art comes out of great pain. I watched a video with Don McLean, and he's saying great artists wake up in pain every day. And I'm like, I'm kind of, yeah, I'm down with this because I'm not in pain every day, but yeah, it's weighing on me. The the thoughts of creativity and wishing to inspire an audience and move them and uplift them and all of those things. So you wake up every day with that weight of, um, yeah. Um,
Is it
so the great,
expectation,
obvious, no,
responsibility?
it's just, it sounds so stupid because it's kind of like compared to people at war or doctors or all of these kind of things, it's easy to dismiss and say, "What are you talking about? Get a job, get a proper job." But I believe that you're right. Heads are wired differently, and if you think of any great artist that pops into your head, you know, Elton John, Nathan Cassidy, right? Anyone that pops into your head,
They were the first two.
almost, yeah, yeah, almost certainly you're going to be thinking about somebody that has gone through a lot of ups and downs in their life,
Mm,
drugs, problems with the law, things that have gone through in their life. And obviously, you pick some extreme examples. But you think of any great artist, they're not going to be probably people that are just like, oh yeah, I'm fine, I'm happy, every day is great, and also I get on stage and deliver this incredible performance. I
yeah,
can't think of anyone that's just yeah,
no,
they've
definitely.
got stuff going on, they've got stuff going on in their head, and there's some obvious examples like Elton John, for example. Their best art arguably comes from those places in their life where they're at their most
Yeah,
extreme in their head and they're going through the most turmoil. So, it's a difficult one because I mine past pain for my art. I mine current pain for my art. But when you're working with new comedians, it's a difficult thing to approach to say, if you've been through some bad stuff in your life, that's a good thing for your art.
mm,
It's a difficult thing and the more difficult things you go through in your life, the better that could be for your art. That's a difficult thing but the
yeah,
one thing I would say on that is make sure you are, as an artist, I always say to people, make sure you're not processing through your art that thing. That's what therapy's for.
right.
That's what talking to your friends is for. If you're processing it through your audience, the audience are going to be going, oh, God, this isn't particularly comedy. You can maybe do it with theatre, but this isn't funny because the person is clearly in pain and hasn't worked out. If
Yeah,
you've processed it to a certain extent, then you can talk about it and you know, get laughs out of it. But it's a fine line sometimes because I sometimes want to see my artist in a bit of pain. My favorite stand-ups, you think, you're going through some stuff
yeah, right.
right now, and you are an interesting character, and you're in pain, and this is funny, but it's deeply funny. It's really hitting. Go deep. That's what I say to a lot of new comedians as well. Go deep, go as deep as you can, and that's where the big laughs will come out of that
Yeah.
crater that you've created.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. I think a lot of the um that TV comedy industry, there's an emphasis on younger, newer comics who, I don't know, look better on posters or on screen or something. But there's so much less life experience to draw on in your 20s, like, yeah, what about that time you're halfway through a game and your Xbox jams? Everyone, like, not that I'm quoting anyone who said that, but you know it's comics, I think in their like 30s, 40s and 50s that can tell you about, I don't know, breaking up with a long-term partner, the death of someone you love, but do it in a way that still brings you with them on a journey and makes it funny. I think the if we're talking about the mining analogy, I think it's just such a kind of deeper mine to draw from than if, you're what, I don't know, in your mid 20s or something.
It is that, but it's also about recognizing that you can go to those places. So it's very rare that a young stand-up comedian, maybe Daniel Kitson is one of the rare exceptions that knows he can mine deep, even if he's 20 years old.
Mm,
Um,
yeah,
because I'm often looking back now at what happened in my childhood and I'm mining deeply there. But I wouldn't have thought about doing that in my 20s because I
right.
guess you're too full of optimism and positivity, maybe. And but you're right. There are of course some great young stand-ups in their 20s, but there's even more greater stand-ups in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and older.
Mm,
And talking about Don McLean, great art. I talk about this in my current show that great art, what my definition of great art is something you can look at over and over again. You can stand there staring at it, Michelangelo's David or Van Gogh or whatever. How many times do you go back and watch the same stand up? Do you deliver the same set? That for
right.
me is a definition of a great artist. So someone like, I don't know, talking about In Pain and Doug Stanhope,
Yeah,
I'm talking
right.
about TV comedy. He did a TV show, I think 15, 20 years ago. It was recorded at Just a Tonic, I think. And I could just watch those sets over and over again. I knew what was coming, but it's great art and it just moves you and just makes you laugh every time. And that's what we're missing on television. And and it's easier to do than producers think it is. Get someone on like Doug Stanhope and he'll deliver that every time. You know, you can film him in a used to do things with Charlie Brooker, didn't he,
Yeah,
Doug Stanhope? You could just watch those little segments over and over again. Get a great stand-up on. Get There's loads of good stand-ups. Get a great stand-up on. There are great stand-ups in their 20s and there are great stand-ups in their 30s, 40s, 50s. But they're overlooked often for many reasons for good stand-ups. Get the great stand-ups on more because there's plenty of them about.
absolutely. Nath, we're getting close to the end here because I know that you are on the clock a little bit. You talk a
Hmm.
lot about, you know, helping more junior comics with tips about shows and what have you. Can you think of any tips about stand up that you've been given over the years that you have abided by ever since?
Um, not maybe not remembering specific tips, but certainly you remember the people that when you were first starting out took time. So if you, as you say, if you've gone back to a stand-up and giving them advice, they'll always remember that. It's a really great thing for you to do because it's so easy to ignore. So
Yeah,
I remember like Mickey Flanagan, who wasn't famous at the time when I first started out, but he was quite a bit more experienced than me and somebody, I looked up and respected. He just took the time out to say what you're doing is good and um, have more self-confidence in terms of what you're doing, because I think you're really good. And so, that's not so much advice as positivity. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so yeah, it's not remembering any specific advice particularly. The only advice I've taken on that I was given many, many years ago is do work for either what you think it's worth or for free, nothing in between. I really like that advice. Um, and it can go for stand up as well. Some people sometimes say to me, I'll give you £20. I can only afford £30 for this gig. I'm like, I'll do it for nothing. Um, I'll do it for nothing because then you know the value of what I'm doing. The value of what I'm doing is £200, but I'll do it for you for free. And that goes for everything I do. I think that's a great bit of advice for everything. If you can afford it and not take the £10, it's better not to take it for me than take it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I actually live by exactly that myself.
Mm.
Nathan, my dear fellow, that hour has whistled by. We could easily have done more, but for people
Mm.
that have enjoyed our chat and would like to jump on board the Nathan Cassidy train, either socially or to see you actually in real life, what would be the best ways for people to find you?
Everything's on nathancassidy.com, or I'm the Nathan Cassidy on Instagram. So yeah, all my gigs and shows are there. I'm doing shows all over the country. The rest of the year, I did a European tour last year, so I may do that again later in the year. So yeah, check it all out there. Thanks, Sam. That's been really interesting.
I've really enjoyed it as well. Thank you so much for your time and very much looking forward to our paths crossing again in real life very soon.
Can't wait. Lots of love.
Yeah, cheers, pal. Nice one. So that was the brilliantly talented Mr. Nathan Cassidy. I think there were loads in there, but here are three takeaways that I took. One was the hit and miss nature of creativity. I loved it when he did the sums. If you write for 3 minutes a day, that means you get around 20 minutes every week. That means you get around 100 minutes every month, which consequently means you get around 1,000 minutes every year. From that, you only need a 20th of it to be any good, and you've got your hour. Number two was the positive headspace that Nathan creates. Public speaking or any performance is hard. So respect this fact and be nice to yourself. And number three, you got to start any performance with a bit of an edge. I'm sure there are comics that are all just like, loosey goosey before they go on stage and they do great. But I personally agree with Nathan. You're much better off feeling like a coiled spring just before you start. So when it's your time, you're like, give me that microphone. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And you got a bit about you. Thank you for listening to Before, During, After, a Smirk Experience podcast about performance from the inside. If you've enjoyed it, why not share it with someone else who you think might get it? And give us a follow while you're at it. See you next time.